A statement by New Hampshire State Representative Ellen Reed.
The same nonprofit that was, I remember vaguely, was accused of not doing their job.
Yes.
Is that this group?
Yes, they receive 12,000 calls for assistance a year. We know out of those 12,000 calls, between 275 and 500 kids are disseminated, and they house temporarily between 300 and 400, but we have anecdotal evidence that a lot of those people who were housed were kicked out suddenly from their shelter or denied shelter, other people were denied shelter. So, I mean, at best, if those two groups are completely separate, you're talking about actual material benefit to less than 1,000 of those 12,000 calls.
So wasn't their status, or their nonprofit status, or their executive director, I forget the details, threatened to no longer run that? Or am I remembering that wrong?
You're talking about the bill to investigate them, which was tabled by a narrow margin.
It was what?
Tabled by a narrow margin. It's effectively dead. I will say that this umbrella organization is what takes all the federal money and the state money and disseminates it to their membership organizations. The membership organizations are the ones that actually provide the assistance. So I don't think any of the membership organizations are run by terrible people. In fact, I heard from workers and managers in those member organizations that they're as frustrated with that umbrella group as the rest of us are. It's really just the executives in the umbrella group that are the problem. The people who go to work at a shelter or a hotline, those people genuinely want to help.
They do good work in a lot of ways too. I mean, many of the workers who had HB 1675, which is the legislation that you're referring to, which would have started a legislative investigation on this organization, which gets 99% public dollars, but has no real accountability to where those dollars go. And as Ellen said, you got services that aren't being remitted to people who need them at these shelters. So you got, I think it's a 12 coalition hubs across the state.
Oh yeah, they got rid of one. It's 12.
All right, so 12 now. And we had many people. One of them, actually, I won't even say that. I don't want to expose these people. They were very, very afraid of retaliation for speaking up. But they would call us and they'd tell us their story about how these services aren't being actually given to the people at the coalition hubs that they're at, or beyond that, that the coalition hubs aren't being, they're being bottlenecked with the resources that are being remitted to the top heavy parts of the organization.
So in essence, you have public funds going to public, what the Supreme Court calls a government function, because these people, they train police officers, they do the collection of evidence, rape kits, they do the management of the sex offender registry. All of these things are being done with public funds for public jobs, but they have none of the transparency and accountability that a public agency would have to have. So they get to kind of pretend that they're a public agency when they want the power and the credibility, and then they get to hide behind this weird private nonprofit whenever they want to. So that bill to investigate them got amended to just having right to know access over their books. That was it. And that is the version that got tabled. It's problematic because the people in that umbrella organization have a lot of clout, political clout. And so there's a lot of pressure there to not kind of cross your eyes at them. But I don't know, I just believe in transparency. I didn't think that was very, sorry.
That was just
political clout with who?
Primarily the Shaheens. Don't know how many are fans of Jean Shaheen. I'm a hard left Democrat, but it is what it is. So.
Do you think anything's changed since this whole Epstein?
I think yes. I think the groundswell is building for more transparency and more accountability. And weirdly, this organization, through like 3 orders of connection, can be connected back to Epstein. I will explain exactly how. They received $500,000 to lobby for this California billionaire named Henry Nicholas. He has this organization that basically is seen predominantly as an attack on the rights of the accused, but he spent millions of dollars in multiple states trying to push this constitutional amendment to basically take away some of the rights of the accused. And this organization took about $500,000 to lobby. They're not allowed to lobby. They're a 501c3, so they have to keep lobbying down to 5% of their private donations, which ends up being about $11,000 a year, and yet they lobby on 150 bills a year with 5 to 7 lobbyists. The math is not mathing, but they took $500,000 from this guy. By the time they took it, this is 2018, by the time they took it, he was known, you can look him up. He was in trouble for securities fraud. He had gotten in trouble for battering his partner. He had 5 felony convictions for drug trafficking, involving this really weird situation where he had smeared feces on his girlfriend's face and she was overdosing in the hotel room and he wouldn't let the cops in to save her. Really bad situation. He also was in a 2007 ABC News article, you can look it up, it's called Billionaires in the Bedroom. 2007, before we knew what an Epstein was, right? And this article covered the sexual proclivities of 2 billionaires. One was Henry Nicholas, who, by his own admission, has a $30 million, his words, sex and drug lair underground under an equestrian estate in Nevada. And the other billionaire that they covered in that article, you'll never guess, has a little St. James Island and is a New York financier by the name of Jeffrey Epstein. So when I was working on this just a few weeks back, I said, hey, is there any chance Henry Nicholas is in the Epstein files? And someone at the table looked it up 430 times. So the billionaire that paid this coalition organization $500,000 to lobby, which was already legally shaky, is in the Epstein files 430 times.
Would you go back, where are you making that connection with Billy and Jeannie and Stephanie too?
I don't have the particulars on all of that. I really don't. And my whole goal here is to get people aware that we have a law saying that survivors have a right to be informed of their rights, and their rights include a rape kit, and that I'm fighting the very last organization I should be fighting on that. So I do believe we need transparency. I do believe there's some problematic stuff that looks like it could have been illegal, and we should be looking into that, and nobody is right now.
But you're saying this is Jeannie's.
Yes, so the public affairs director is someone who's very well connected herself. She's married to the political director of WMUR, and she has worked very heavily on the previous Shaheen campaigns. So that's our current senator, not Stephanie.
What journalists are really working either with you or someone else to bring this forward and keep it in front of the citizens of this great state of New Hampshire?
So, as I said, WMUR is out because the political director is married to the public affairs director for the organization, right? On the Seacoast side, our senator, who is on this same committee, the committee that heard my bill, the senator works at one of the 12 organizations, and she is married to the person who basically ran for a very, very long time all of the Seacoast media, and that's All Childers.
Just to add on to that, to get to what Ellen, the press office is completely empty most days.
Yeah.
WMUR has their camera in there sometimes, but they report on the legislature in minute-and-a-half increments at the end of the political show on Sunday.
And it's not usually substantive.
It isn't substantive at all. This happens, and that happens in Bing. So Bing, bong, bong, and it's about 3 points. They make them very quickly, and then it makes you think that, everything's fine up in the legislature. It's all going great. Instead of focusing on the moments in committee where people say, there are plenty of moments of footage, bits and pieces, newsreels, muckraking to be done under the Golden Dome. Nobody's doing it. Nobody's writing any stories about Ellen Reed.
Well, in depth. Nancy West.
Nancy West, that's a great point, and it's free. Nancy West is also free too, so it's a great point. I forget about in depth. Most of the media here, NHPR does media.
NHPR did a story, a couple of stories.
And Josh has done decent job on your being banned, actually. But the crux of it is, when Leishman started in the legislature, the press room had many, many people from many different... It was packed, as Peter says. It was packed, full of local newspapers from across the state who had bureaus to report on the legislature. We, luckily, the Monadnock Ledger transcript contracts out with the Concord Monitor for Charlotte Matherly, so she's writing a column about the legislature in both of those papers, but that's really the only local paper that's got column on what happens up in the State House.
Sure.
So to answer your question earlier, journalists, I mean, like you said, there are a couple of stories and things like that. Is there someone comprehensively investigating what Representative Reed is talking about?
You're pretty hard left
Yes,
Democrat.
founder of the Progressive Caucus that I don't even associate now because they're not progressive enough.
And that is exactly my question. Please tell me about your experiences, all of you, with the Progressive Caucus.
Oh. Well, Ellen is the founder.
Oh, okay, I'm the founder and I'm the first chair, and when I was chairing it, we met every week. We had a task list. We had point people on every committee, and we sent out recommendations, and it was all according to our values document, which was, I think, the current caucus has completely gotten rid of. The values document had 12 core principles, policy positions that were unquestionably progressive. I am, just so you know, an outspoken socialist. I've literally held up the Communist Manifesto in session before. So that's how far left I am. It was more to troll the Republicans, but I recently got in the news because I think it was Jason Osborne or Sweeney said something from the well about every person in the chamber said they were against an income tax, and I went up and declared a point of personal privilege, which is what you do when you're insulted. And I said, I, for one, have never said I'm against an income tax. And actually that got a lot of respect because I'm being direct, bold, and honest about my positions, and I'm acting in good faith. But to the Progressive Caucus, so there was a bunch of, I could spend an hour telling the story, and I'm not going to. But essentially what I find, let me get really broad. Every occupation attracts a certain kind of personality because occupations are self-selecting. So like if you like people, you might become a nurse. If you like kids, you might be a teacher. Turns out if you are a clinically diagnosable narcissist, politics is where you go. Wow. And
Who would have guessed?
Who would have guessed?
Who would have guessed?
That or Hollywood. The ones who aren't attractive enough for Hollywood go to politics. But the problem is that even with my Progressive Caucus, which I started in all these, it was originally kind of quietly between me and a few friends called the Bernie Caucus. I was a surrogate on both of Bernie's campaigns. It still attracted kind of like basically middle ground Democrats that thought of themselves as progressive, like when they compare themselves to, a Republican, they're progressive, but not like, and what I really needed was institutional progressives who actually, it's not enough to be a progressive on policy. Being a progressive on policy is great, except it doesn't really mean anything when you have to stick your neck out and fight for it and you're not willing to. Because then what does it matter what you say you believe in if you're not willing to put your money where your mouth is? And so what I found was a lot of people who ran away from what they claim they believe. And in fact, sometimes people who claim they believe something actually just got elected because it made them feel really important. Like they get one of these little badges, and you get a license plate, and it makes you feel super. It's like they didn't start as an activist. You know what I'm saying? They didn't start from a principal position. They were like they owned a business in their town, and someone somewhere was trying to recruit because you can't recruit anybody to run because it's only $200 per biennium. And so someone somewhere went to them and like, hey, everybody knows you. You're important, and they're like, yeah. I am important. And then they run, and these are the same people who show up and they follow their party's lead no matter what, and they go home feeling super important, right? And that's kind of who we're working with. And the same is true within the Progressive Caucus, it turns out, basically the fight over who got to claim the title of chair of the Progressive Caucus became this completely dysfunctional thing that blew up the entire thing. And so now the Progressive Caucus has taken pro-war stances. They recently took an anti-housing stance, and I just have nothing to do with them. It seems like all they care about is like drumming up social media around cultural wars, which it's not that I'm against the causes they say they're for, it's that those aren't the really meaningful things that impact people's lives. I care about housing, I care about healthcare, I care about these things, and they just want to like score political points in this social media world of political theater.
They want to get eyeballs.
Yeah, and admittedly, I'm a terrible politician that way. I think I'm a good lawmaker, but I'm a terrible politician. I don't really do social media. I have a volunteer who does what little. I've had it selling myself, and I kind of get asked by people like Jonah to come and talk because I don't push things. But anyway, that's the answer. For that, I can talk in detail, but it would make me look like I'm gossiping about individuals, and that's not really what it's about.